our film festival. It's crazy to think that it went by so fast. Hey, but I'm really excited for this Q&A. This is actually Dak Schaefer, who is the animator and filmmaker for Surfer Joe, which was an awesome animation that played last night. So we're super excited to have him in for this kind of pop-up Q&A. So let's bring him on. What's up, Dax? How are you, man?
Hello. Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I just want to specify the director for Surfer Joe is Jim Keeshan, and I was the production manager as well as the animation director.
Oh, okay.
So I was kind of a cat wrangler, basically.
Yeah.
We had to get a bunch of art to look the same and all mesh. But I also I headed coloring and doing all that kind of stuff too. There isn't a shot in the film that I didn't do something to, but I did not like animate everything or anything. So there was a ton of artists who worked on that short and put a lot of time and effort.
I can't even begin to imagine what that was like in terms of animating. And I think Dax, you may have froze here. Uh-oh. Oh no, we lost him. So this is the only pitfall about doing virtual stuff, is sometimes you have to rely on technology, and technology doesn't want to work for you. So here we are. But if you guys haven't seen it, Surfer Joe is such a cool animation. I know very little about animation, so I'm hoping we can answer some questions from Dax and what that process looks like of making animation films, but I know very little about it. But here he is.
Wait. Am I back?
I was just saying, that's the only downfall about virtual stuff is you rely on internet, and if the internet goes out for a second, it just cuts you off. But no, that's no worries.
That was it's like funny because we were sitting on here and it was working fine the whole time, and then it just was like, nope.
Every time. So Dax, I mean, tell me, as an animator, because I was just telling the audience, I know nothing about animation at all. I know very little about it. So how did you get into animation? And then I want to talk about like the story of kind of what process was done to make Surfer Joe. Because I mean, the detail of that is insane. But how did you get into animation? Yeah.
Personally, I've just drawn my whole life. That's always been. I feel like that's a story you run into a lot with artists. There's just like, yeah, I've just always kind of done it. When I was in college, I went to UC. I went to UC Santa Barbara, and I studied film there. But I ended up, as well as a minor in Japanese. But I ended up going kind of into animation projects a lot while I was there, and then actually after college, I ended up pursuing it way more. And I went and took a lot of like private classes, and then I went to Santa Monica College, which is actually where I met Jim because he's a teacher there. And,
oh, no way. Okay.
Yeah. So it's so me working on this is actually kind of tied to my education with animation, because he at one point he couldn't work with me while I was a student, but once I wasn't in his classes anymore, he offered me a chance to kind of take a stab at working on this project, because Surfer Joe was a project he had been like on and off trying to work on it for like as far back as over 10 years ago. So wow. That's just the nature of a lot of animated projects. They sit around for a while because they take so long to do. And he just had this one, and it took a while. It took a long time of like going and coming back to it and coming back to it. And then,
right.
And then like a few years ago, there was the final push to be like, all right, it's all basically animated. Let's color it. So that was how I met Jim, and I took his animation and story classes there. And I've just continued to find jobs and different little niches working in this industry. I ended up, I was a PA at a place called, well, actually, no, I was an intern first at Titmouse, which is basically like an animation studio for Adult Swim and some Disney shows. And then I ended up like Metalocalypse. I don't know if you ever seen that, but I ended up moving to a PA gig at a place called Duck, which actually isn't around anymore. one of the last 2D places, like
Okay.
traditional anime, and they actually had animation desks so that you could. They had people who would still be animating on paper. It was kind of like a weird last of its kind place. But I've always been interested in hand drawn in 2D animation as opposed to CG.
Okay.
Nothing against any other forms of animation. It's just the one that I take interest in. So, but it is a more niche thing, and it is harder and harder to find.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, that's basically it. I and then I just kind of have wandered around from gig to gig, somehow
Wow.
surviving. So
It's amazing. I mean, the animation on Surfer Show is so rad. And like one question I
thank
have
you.
with that is like how, and this might sound like a silly question because I know very little bit about animation, but how much of that was hand drawn? Was any done on paper? Was it all done in computers? And what's that process look like, or how much? Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting question because it is kind of unique in that scenario. It is all hand drawn, basically, like either on paper or on Cintiq. But the um, I'm trying to think of it. There's like one scene, or there's like the space wave scene that we
Yeah.
used some. We had one guy who uh we had like one artist do in Maya like a kind of, it was Danny.
Okay.
He created this like kind of tube, and then we used like we sort of use this like After Effects particle thing to like make, but that's like the only effect shot I can think of where it's like we did something that wasn't hand drawn. Um, but apart from that, everything is drawn. Uh,
Oh no. That was a it sounded like a really good thought too. Hey Dax, it looks like your connection went down a little bit, but no worries. I'm sure he'll be back. This is so fascinating. Like I mentioned, I know nothing about the animation world, so I'm super intrigued about what that process looks like, and I can't imagine hand drawing shot for shot. So that's pretty intense.
I
Hey,
learned how to read coloring quickly. Okay.
go
Where did
ahead.
it cut off? Sorry.
It's cut. I don't actually remember.
Oh no.
But I
What?
was actually hand drawing, talking about the particles and After Effects, and that was the only other effects that we're using. And then I think you were talking about somebody else somewhere, maybe.
Oh, I was just saying, like, Danny had helped us with this one effect shot, but apart from that one effect shot, pretty much everything is hand drawn, and maybe 30% of the film was drawn on paper originally because it was
Oh,
started so long ago, and Jim had sat on a lot of it for a while, so we ended up not having everything together. But like I had to go through a bunch of boxes of animation, and I used a scanner to like digitize a bunch of it at one point, and then we actually brought it into a software called Digicel originally, and we were kind of continuing to animate digitally, and also even like modify shots that had been done on paper. Um, and then eventually we moved everything to a program called TV Paint, specifically for coloring, but there was still animation that we hadn't done that got completed in TV Paint. So it spanned like paper and two different animation softwares
oh my
before we
God.
got it.
How long did that process take to hand draw those originally?
I can't tell. I don't know. It's not because I don't want to, but I just don't really
Right,
know
right.
because it was
It's like a
so
time.
many different. But it took a long time. It took years to animate it because again, this was like an independent budget, and if it were a studio, Jim, like a bigger studio, Jim would have been able to like probably get it done within a year or two. But because it was always like he needed to find funds to get it, and to pay all the people who were working on it, so it always kind of like had these big pauses in between production. But yeah, they took a long time. Like I remember that one shot of there's like one with this big wave that's kind of cycling,
Yeah, yeah.
that Joe goes under, and I remember that one probably took me like the greater part of a month just to do animation for it. Like
Wow.
some of them, the more intense ones, were definitely really time consuming just because we hand drew all the water in it, and that took forever too.
Oh man.
But yeah, no, it's kind of a strange little film to have been a part of, and I'm it's
It,
weird looking at it now because I haven't worked on it, you know, in a long time, and I was just as we were watching it, as I was looking at it on the stream yesterday, it was kind of like I can kind of look at this objectively now, and it's just
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
fun.
So, right. So I mean, it's a great film. I mean, the animation is awesome on it, and like I said, I'm so fat. Actually, I think you're the first animator I've spoken to this whole week long. So
Oh,
it's
cool.
pick your brains. Again, I know nothing about it, but when you watch it, right, and you watch it on the stream, like, what are you most proud about with this project?
Um, maybe maybe the coloring. I actually am really happy with how the coloring turned out. That's maybe a weird thing to focus on, but yeah, I just our goal was to kind of make this vibrant short, and I kind of I did kind of laugh. First of all, I want to say like I really loved all the other films that were showing in our block. But I always kind of laughed because it's like Joe is such a like vibrant and kind of cheery thing,
Right,
and you put it next to some of these like more drama sort of focused pieces sometimes, and it's always a little funny to me because it's like, does this really fit being being next to these kinds of movies? Um, but I love the eclecticness that there was for all the different types of stories. But yeah, our goal was kind of to make this like sunny sort of California feeling short, and I don't know why I'm doing this with my hands, but but it was yeah, I think that came out well. There's like a few shots in it personally that I did animate pretty independently,
oh wow.
and so I there's like one of where the car like zooms by three people who are sitting there drinking shakes, and I like that one. And then there's I did the last shot actually. That was one
Okay.
where it's like the wave spinning, and then the
Yeah,
line turned into a line that becomes the sound wave. That was a lot of fun.
that's awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, even the color, everything is so it's so great. Again, I can't even begin to imagine what that process was like in terms of like getting that from start to finish, man. So really, really well done. Oh no, I hope he heard all of that because it was I meant it. So hopefully we can get Dax back on. But I mean, if you guys haven't seen the film, it's absolutely amazing. Hey,
Sorry,
it's
he's
all right.
cutting out. This is
Technology, dude. Technology.
I won't I won't drag it out too long for fear that I keep dropping away. The but yeah, well we had a color script that was pretty good and accurate, and so like in animation sometimes what you do is you have storyboards where somebody plans out scenes, like you have, which is the thing for live action too, where you're like, oh, this shot, this shot, this shot. And in animation, it's not uncommon to have color scripts where it's kind of more like beats throughout, and someone will sit and kind of try to point out what the palette should be throughout. And so we had a pretty decent one to begin with, and then it was a matter of following that, but also TV Paint's pretty powerful. It actually has a lot of special features. Without getting too technical, but it basically has like a node coloring system so that it recognizes line art, and you can kind of go, all right, fill here with yellow, fill here with red, fill here with this. So it doesn't, back when animation was done on paper and cells, you had to hand paint everything, and
Right.
coloring was like astronomically expensive, and a lot of times you'd have to overseas it.
Oh wow. So
Um,
now we have software that does that for you for the most part. It makes it a lot easier, which is awesome. I can't imagine what that would be like just trying to color every single line in of each frame, picking a palette. I mean, it could take hours. I'm
yeah,
sure we did it at some point in time. So, um,
it is very time consuming. But another thing that we did though that I thought ended up looking really nice is we actually did colored lines, and that's rather than just leave it black. All the line art is actually like colored as well, so it gives it a nice feeling. But so that it took a while to do, and we did do like lighting passes on it too, where there's like shadows and highlights, which is it's a hard thing to do in TV. But if you're working on like features or shorts, you can you can focus a little more on details. So yeah, I hope that
Yeah,
clarifies something.
absolutely, man. Well, hey, Dax, thank you so much for taking the time out, man. It was great to meet you and talk to you. Where can we find you? Are you like on social media? Like, how do we stay in touch with?
Well, plug the film first. You can find Surfer Joe. Find our Facebook page, Surfer Joe Film, on Facebook, and we'll post like little updates about our film there. If you want to follow me, I'm at Dax Schaefer. That's DAXSCHAFFER. On Twitter and Instagram is mostly where I post. I put a lot of my own personal drawings up on Instagram.
Nice.
And yeah, and just also thank you again for. I wasn't sure if it dropped out for a second. Thank if you're like, why'd he pause? Thank you for having us be a part of the festival, and thank you again for us being a finalist in the. That's a huge honor. So we're very appreciative of being here, and congrats to all the other filmmakers who have been in the festival, and yeah, and to you, and yeah, all congrats I can give, you know.
Thank you so much. Well, Dax, thank you so much, man. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you. I definitely am looking forward to seeing your future work, man. I love the film, so congratulations.
And same to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, man, that was fantastic. What a cool like thing to do was animate. I don't know nothing about it, so I'm always been fascinated about it. I always wanted to do it as a kid, but I can't draw. I still can't draw, so it's good to just kind of get that insight. So guys, only a couple more hours left. We got still films just starting to get started, so jump on over to our streaming pages. You can watch some of the films. But until then, guys, I'll see you tonight at the awards. It should be fun.